All right. Earlier this week, we had a report from longtime friend of the show and like legitimately longtime friend of the show, as you, myself, and Kyle all worked with him at Liberty Ballers a long time ago when we were much, much younger and, at least from my perspective, better looking, or at least younger looking. Not you. You've aged gracefully. Me, on the other hand. Anyway, regardless,
I got a lot of gray hairs now.
longtime friend of the show, Jake Fischer, came out with a report. He was on the Bleacher Report podcast talking about Quentin Grimes. And obviously the Sixers, the Sixers offseason has been sort of held in, I won't say hostage, but certainly held in limbo. That's a better word for it because of the Quentin Grimes situation. And Jake reported that there is some buzz about Grimes wanting to take the qualifying offer as well. Now, Jake did then follow it up by saying, I think at the end of the day, as things get closer, as we get into September and maybe even October, there will be enough synergy between Grimes and the Sixers to come to a deal. He also says that the Sixers, he can absolutely say that there are people in the organization, when asked about Quentin Grimes, saying that he is their top priority and that they are going to bring Grimes back, that it's just a matter of dollars and cents. He also says that Grimes benefits from taking a significant deal from Philadelphia. So Jake is saying that there is more talk about Grimes taking the qualifying offer, but it seems like Jake is throwing a little bit of cold water on that by saying, yeah, there's some smoke, but it still seems to make the most sense that Grimes would come back.
It seems like it. And we'll get into the specifics in a second here. But the way I look at this is that Quentin Grimes, I understand why he and his agent are frustrated with the current state of affairs with restricted free agency. And we just did a podcast on hard caps and aprons and all of these things, which makes it a lot harder for the middle class of NBA players. And I mean good NBA players like Quentin Grimes. Not great NBA players, but good NBA players like Quentin Grimes to get paid. What do you think, now that I'm thinking about it? Let's say 3 or 4 years ago, Quentin Grimes is in the same exact scenario.
And are we talking about with the same, because, all right, so let's assume that the salary cap threshold is the same.
Is the same too.
Yeah. So
that's a good point. Yeah. Because obviously the cap has gone up in recent years.
No, I think he could comfortably get 15 to 20.
Yeah.
In today's economics.
I think it would be closer to 20.
Yeah. No, I think, and basically, like a lot of teams, even the ones with cap space like Brooklyn, haven't gone out there and tried to make an offer. And I do think so much of this comes to there's just so many restrictions now with those aprons, which I'll try my best not to resist the urge to get deep into the weeds on that, because we're trying to keep this a relatively short podcast. But I think there's so many teams that are concerned with those limitations now that they're scrutinizing these moves to a degree that they never have been before. And a lot of times you would see, young players coming off of rookie scale contracts, which Grimes did. I think he's made about $11 million or so.
$11 million over 4 years.
Yep. As the former 25th pick in the draft. But you would see them get pretty significant jumps in salary, because even with that jump, they're still underpaid. And I think nowadays, if you want to get that $20 million salary, there's just a higher bar to clear, because you can only have so many of them on the roster because of those limitations. So yeah, I think the aprons and the new collective bargaining agreement has had a pretty big impact on this class of players. And because of that, you have to be just a little bit more judicious on how you give them out.
So I guess here's the way I would break this down, because Jake did mention that this did get aggregated with Jake saying that there is some smoke that he could take the qualifying offer. But if you listen to the whole segment, Jake came to the conclusion that he's probably going to sign a contract with the Sixers, which I think makes sense from an outside perspective. But let's go through the scenario where he does take the qualifying offer. What does that mean exactly? Obviously, it is a 1-year deal, and then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. But what are the other issues that pop up along with that?
And I think that's pretty close to a disaster for both sides, if I'm being honest. I don't think that works out well for either side. Obviously, so if he takes the qualifying offer, that's a 1-year, $8.7 million contract. Now, one of the rules in the NBA, this doesn't tie specifically to qualifying offers, but any veteran who takes a 1-year deal gets an implied no trade clause. We saw that with Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon earlier in the offseason. They have no trade clauses in their contracts as well. It's an automatic thing. It's not something that gets negotiated, but it applies to Quentin Grimes here because the qualifying offer is a 1-year deal. So he gets no trade clause. So you might be thinking, all right, well, but then if he gets let's say he's sitting here in the middle of the year and he wants to go to a team. A team wants to trade for him, and they have interest in giving him a new contract. So he's going to want to get to that team, force his way to that team. Can't do it because if you waive that no trade clause, then you lose bird rights. So the acquiring team,
killer.
It's a killer for someone like Grimes. So then Grimes in a spot where
the same bird rights that the Sixers are trying to sign him with right now.
And again, bird rights allow you to re-sign your own player and go over the cap while doing so. So it's a huge deal. There aren't very many under the cap teams. Unless you're traded to like the Brooklyn Nets, those bird rights are a massive deal. So if you end up taking that qualifying offer, he'd be sitting here in Philadelphia on a 1-year deal. He would have no prospects of being traded because his value is to bring you back with those bird rights, which he wouldn't have. And the Sixers would be disincentivized from playing him heavy minutes because you've already signaled you don't think you're in the long-term plans of the franchise. You want to go somewhere else where they, believe in you. And by believing in you, that means paying you what you feel like you are worth. Well, if that's the case, and they don't think you're going to want to stay here when you're an unrestricted free agent, they're going to prioritize the minutes of their 3 guards on the roster as well. So not only does that hurt the Sixers, and it hurts the Sixers because, the Sixers, even if maybe you don't view Grimes as a long-term piece, having him in at like a $15 million salary as a young player, a young good player, would be a significant trade chip. Well, the Sixers lose the ability to trade that because nobody's going to value a player who they would be acquiring without bird rights.
The way it's got to work for Grimes is he's got to sign and then get traded.
Yes.
He cannot get traded and then sign.
The order of operations is very important. Even if you don't want to be in, let's say he's of the mindset where he doesn't want to be in Philadelphia long-term because he knows there's 3 young guards they're trying to develop. We can argue whether or not he should be of that mindset, and I'm not reporting that he is of that mindset, but of the hypothetical, let's say that he is viewing it that way. The order of operations is you sign the guaranteed money, and then you become a problem and get the team that you want to go to, not become a problem before signing that contract, because if you have to take that qualifying offer, I do think it hurts both sides significantly.
It would also hurt the Sixers just looking back at their offseason. If Grimes took an $8 million deal, they could have afforded Guerschon Yabusele and not found that second apron and all those restrictions. They could have brought him back. And, if you go back to the beginning of free agency, Guerschon Yabusele was like, the Sixers really didn't make me an offer. And Daryl Morey is on the record saying, yeah, we had to figure out the Quentin Grimes thing. And that was with the idea that they were going to sign him to a deal worth more money. And if you also wanted to get more sinister, let's say the Sixers basically called his bluff and said, okay, you don't want to be here, but you're still not in a great spot with that qualifying offer. We're not going to play you that much. And then we'll re-sign you at an even lower sort of price. So it makes a lot of sense for Quentin Grimes to take whatever the best deal possible is. And I understand the idea that it stinks. In past years, he probably would have been taken care of a little bit faster. He would have been a more in-demand free agent. He might have even had more options for places to sign. But as Jake mentioned in his initial reporting, and as you mentioned earlier, he's only made $11 million in his career. That's a lot of money to you and me. But Quentin Grimes is probably going to get offered a deal where he makes more than $11 million in every year of this contract. I would be surprised if it isn't that. If it isn't close to that $15 million range. We can quibble about where it ends up, but it's going to be more than $11 million because, like you said, the Sixers are incentivized to bump that number up to a nice mid-tier salary so they are able to attach picks and Grimes to be able to get other players if this crowded backcourt does not have room for Quentin Grimes in the future. The other thing I would say, past NBA history, we glorify guys who bet on themselves. Fred VanVleet is always talking about how he is Mr. Bet on himself. And by the way, for Fred VanVleet, great for him. That's an amazing success story. And I love when the scenario goes where the player bets on himself, they ball out, and then they get paid. That is really cool. The opposite is often true, though. And those players are taking a gigantic risk. And the best example we have, Nerlens Noel, after the Sixers traded him to Dallas, same exact year Quentin Grimes was in. It was post-rookie contract.
He offered, 4 years, 60 million, 70 million, something like that.
70 million.
Yeah.
4 years, $70 million. And he actually moved agents that year to Rich Paul, I believe, and it was reported that he met Rich Paul at Ben Simmons' birthday party. We're getting a little bit off track here, but yeah, pretty interesting sequence of events. And Rich Paul, according to Nerlens Noel, said, you know what? We're not going to take that that offer because we think you can make more in future years. And we know all of this because Nerlens Noel did not ball out, and he made about $12 million over those few years. And then he sued Rich Paul and said, you cost me $58 million with your bad advice. I don't think it's going to be quite that situation with Quentin Grimes. He should still retain a level of value, but things can go wrong. You never know. And I think he is going to be due a decent payday. And the most logical situation is for him and the Sixers, whether it's 3 years, 4 years, 2+1, whatever, for them to come to an agreement and sign, a $14 million deal, $16 million deal, whatever it is.
And I think
per year. Sorry.
And I think there are some people who are going to be watching this and thinking, like, great, we can get him at $8.7 million. That will give the Sixers flexibility. It'll give them some flexibility under the aprons, and more specifically, it'll give you flexibility to use that taxpayer mid-level exception, which is like $5.7 million. Doesn't matter. The most important thing here is because of all of the salary cap rules and having to match salaries in trades, you need matching salary. So right now, you basically have Kelly Oubre Jr., and Andre Drummond. That's about like $12 million in matching salary. If you could add Quentin Grimes in there at about $15 million, all of a sudden, along with the draft picks you have a lot of resources to go out there and make a trade. If you don't have Quentin Grimes, and if you don't have that, because again, with the qualifying offer, you pretty much can't trade it. He would have to agree to it. Even so, if he does agree to a trade, he wouldn't have any actual trade value in a deal. It would be a lot tougher to make a move at the deadline if there's something out there that you like. So even if you don't want Quentin Grimes, you lose flexibility if he doesn't sign here, and you lose flexibility you lose a lot of flexibility if he takes that qualifying offer.
So we think he's going to be back, right?
Yeah, I think this is, and I guess to wrap this up, I would be stunned if he takes a qualifying offer, in mostly because I think that would be the exact worst move he could make. I don't think that is going to get him the contract he wants next summer. I think this is, there's a lot of free agents, restricted free agents out there right now who have not gotten the offers that they expected, from Jonathan Kuminga to Josh Giddey, Cam Thomas, and Quentin Grimes. I think this is a leverage play, but I think it's a threat that rings a little bit hollow because I just don't think it helps him accomplish his goals.
And, is he missing out on maybe some of the team bonding exercises with Tyrese Maxey? Sure. But as long as he is signed before the year, even if there is a little bit of feet dragging here, it'll be okay. I think as long as he's here before the start of the year, Quentin Grimes will be a decent, he'll be an important part of this team. Obviously, it'll be a little bit of a weird situation with the other 3 young guards here as well. But Quentin Grimes, you can play him up a little bit. If he does sign that contract, like you said, the Sixers will be incentivized to play him. Number one, to see how he fits with all those guys, and also for him to keep his value up too. Yep.
No, I think my biggest takeaway from that report wasn't that there was buzz that he could take the qualifying offer. It's that as we get into September and maybe even closer to October, there will be enough synergy. That suggests we could be talking about this Quentin Grimes situation for quite a while.
October would be a little too long.
A little too long. Get me at least sometime in
early September. Fine.
All right. This has been the PHLY Sixers show, brought to you as always by Rothman Orthopedics. We will be back here you and I won't be back here. I will be on vacation. Rich has been spending the last week having to deal with me and talking Sixers. Devon and Kyle will be back here on Monday to talk some more basketball with you.